What's up, everybody? Welcome back to the channel. Today we have another Diablo 4 Lord of Hatred video. Today we're going to be talking about 15 tips to become rich in Diablo 4 Lord of Hatred. I say specifically the expansion because there are some things that we're utilizing in the end game that are helping us get rich. So get to end game as quick as possible so you can do this stuff. I want to preface everything by saying I am not claiming all of these tips are mine. It is just something, these tips are just something that I've accumulated over time playing the game and consuming content of other content creators. So I'm combining all of that information, all that experience into one video, into this video. So there's going to be some yapping. Try to parse through that as much as possible. But if you do get something for this video, like it, like the video, and subscribe and comment below. Comment below the tip that helped you the most or something that you didn't know from this video. And let's get to the tips. All right. So the first tip we're going to go over is to learn the defensive and offensive systems. There are a lot of different content creators that have put out videos on various things such as damage buckets, legendary aspects, tempering, transmogging, overall to make the best gear you can get possible. Why does that matter? Because the higher difficulty you can do, the more reward you will get. Tip number 2, speed is king. Try to pick a difficulty you can do the fastest and work on upgrades to do that difficulty faster and to push yourself to higher and higher difficulties. This means also working on your glyphs and other pieces of gear to essentially push you into higher and higher difficulties that you can do as quickly as possible. And you can do this by comparing your pit. Let's say you can do a torment level 12 pit in about 10 minutes. Well, if you can do a torment 11 level pit in 6 minutes or 8 minutes, I would prefer to do the torment 11 over the torment 12, or even more if you can do torment 10 in like 4 to 5 minutes. Then I would probably pick that difficulty to do until you get upgrades, until you build a better character so you can do higher difficulty faster. Tip number 3, do not waste the scattered prisms. These things are not as plentiful as you think they are. They are pretty rare, and it took me multiple days to get up to 10, to get up to 12, and I already used 2 of them on gear upgrade potentials. So how do you get around this? Well, there are many different ways of getting around this, and one of the ways of getting around it as far as crafting goes. So what I do for crafting is I will pull up a dungeon and I will I'll use something like an Obel's Reserve dungeon, which give you chests that max out your Obels as quick as possible. And then I will go to the Purveyor of Curiosities and I will roll whatever piece of gear I need that I will be crafting on. Let's say, for example, I want chest armors. Well, I'll buy a bunch of chest armors, and hopefully I'm looking for an ancestral piece of gear with 2 sockets. Because if we have an ancestral gear with 2 sockets, we can essentially craft whatever affixes we want on this piece of gear using the cube. It is not worth crafting all these different affixes on a piece of gear and then having to utilize your scattered prisms to make this a 2-socket item, and then put a legendary affix on it, and then masterwork, and then temper it, and then masterwork it. You're wasting way too many materials on this piece of gear when you could essentially just find something with 2 sockets that's an ancestral, even if it's a magic piece of armor, because if you know anything about the cube, you can just keep adding affixes on it to make it better and better. So that is my recommendation. I would gamble until I found a ancestral 2-piece ancestral with 2 sockets, and then I would craft on top of that. Tip number 4, do not forge rare equipment from the blacksmith. Now you may be thinking to yourself, hey, I don't have a good piece of gear. Maybe I can just forge a couple. No, don't do that here, because it costs Forgotten Souls to craft rare items. And rare and Forgotten Souls are a delicate commodity in this game. You're going to be doing everything to gain Forgotten Souls so that you can temper, so that you can reroll gear, so that you can imprint legendary affixes, so you can masterwork. All those things are dependent on Forgotten Souls. So do not just blow through crafting a chest armor or a weapon when you can just go to an obol reserve and max out your obols and then go to the Purveyor Curiosities to gamble for gear. Tip number 5, utilize the practice technique gold rate along with the practice technique set. Now you could essentially go to the 3-piece and get an additional 25% gold fine. However, I've been messing around with just the 2-piece and the practice technique gold drop rate, and I feel like it's still pretty good. You're gonna, min-max a little bit more with the 3-piece. However, since you only have 5 charm slots, it restricts what you can do with those extra 3 slots. So what I've done is I made a build that I utilize the practice technique set, and then I also use a 2-piece, which gives me a bonus damage modifier along with my unique, which gives me huge amounts of damage. So I'm stacking these 2 things together to make my build better so I can farm T10 instead of doing something like T8 with a 3-piece and a, single charm here and a unique charm here. And then, of course, with this, you would want to make a build that is capable of doing the highest torment difficulty possible. So make a really good character that can do stuff without a full set of charms, and you'll be good to go. Tip number 6. For your war plans, let's say there's one specific activity you want to max out as quickly as possible. Instead of wasting time doing that activity over and over again, I would try to get a new plan or new war plan that has the specific activities that you want to farm and level up, because it's going to be giving you way more activity experience over just doing that solo activity over and over again. And plus, you do a war plan, you get some pretty good rewards. So it's definitely recommended that you utilize the war plans while you're leveling up your war plan activity tree. Tip number 7, I kind of went over it a little bit earlier, but how I do crafting is I find a piece of gear that has the sockets already in the gear, because we talked about the scatter prisms and how rare they are. Well, if I'm looting and I find a piece of gear that has a socket on it, like a ring or an amulet, that's the base I'm going to use to craft on. I'm not going to waste my time burning through my prisms just because I get a perfect piece of gear. I generally don't waste my prisms on just random piece of gear. It really has to be a perfect piece of gear with greater affixes or even uniques that have like the right rolls on it before I start considering using a prism, because I don't want to burn through the prisms. They're a commodity that is pretty rare, so usually I do my crafting on something that has a socket already, or 2 sockets if it's a 2-handed weapon, or 2 sockets if it's pants, chest, helm, etc., etc. That's kind of how I do my crafting. Tip number 8. Now, during the war plans, you're going to run into the activities where you're going to be doing a nightmare dungeon, most likely, unless you're avoiding doing nightmare dungeons. When you're doing that dungeon activity, it's going to teleport you to a nightmare dungeon. Now, what I do is I leave that dungeon, open up the map, and I'll check what is the dungeon doing for me. Now, if the dungeon's giving me grim favors for my whispers, I'll probably just end up doing that dungeon. But if the dungeon is something like this, where it's just a generic dungeon with, let's say, a really bad affix on it, I will go into my nightmare sigil keys and I will right click. I'll use a nightmare sigil and farm that dungeon instead, and it'll give me more rewards while getting war plan progress. So that's just something I do. 2 birds with 1 stone. You're getting your war plan progress, and you're also doing a dungeon that gives you pretty good rewards. Tip number 9, Seer's Reach. Now, I know a lot of people have heard of the Seer's Reach trick as far as getting gems and stuff like that, but there is something that you probably don't know if you don't follow a lot of content from Diablo 4. We're going to go over that real quick, and I'll show you how it works. You're going to complete Seer's Reach, and what you're going to do is open up your map, and you're going to pin a location in the dungeon. Then you're going to hold your menu, and you're going to leave the dungeon. And then you're going to open up your journal, and you're going to reset the dungeon like you normally do for farming Seer's Reach, and then you're going to go back in. And what's going to happen is, since you set a pin on the boss area, it's essentially going to leave that pin in the boss area. So even though the map rerolled, you still have the pin from where the boss arena is, and you can just simply utilize your map to run back to the boss area. And there we have it. That's where our pin is. We're back in the boss arena. And then you have to reset your pin, and then you could do it all over again. Now, this trick is something I learned from another content creator, so I'm definitely not going to take credit for this. But it's one of the things I wanted to distribute, so there you have it. Tip number 10, transmogrify every ancestral legendary that you find. Now, this is going to be working the best for your 2-hand weapons, because the gem affix is something that is supremely desired, and I would probably say this tip is a little bit wishy-washy at the moment, but the thing is a lot of the top players in Diablo 4 do utilize something like this as far as getting your gem strength on your weapon. So what you're going to do is you're going to take any rare 2-handed weapons that you're going to find, and you're going to go to the cube, and you're going to click upgrade to legendary. You're going to get a lot of primordial dust, so this is something that, you know, you're going to have plenty of, and then you're just going to transmute it. It's going to upgrade it to a legendary, and then you're going to transfigure it. Now, you may be asking yourself, but there's no sockets on it. I haven't upgraded it. I haven't done all these things. I haven't used the steam technique where I make sure all the affixes are perfect and all this stuff. Doesn't matter. And for now, that gem strength ability affix, that gem strength affix is the most important thing for doing the most increase to your damage. And plus, if you get that the gem strength on it and it's still craftable, then you could essentially still craft these other things onto it and still make a really good item. But we're focused on getting the item modifiable and also the item with gem strength attached to it. So that's what we're looking for. A content creator said it's 1 in 50 chance that it's going to happen. It's probably not close to that. It might be 1 in 100. So if you're steaming every single piece of gear, you're going to be burning every single material you have, and it's going to be a waste in the long run. That's why this is way better, way more effective, way more efficient. And let's continue to it. So we're going to transfigure it. We have a lot of these from just playing the game, and see what happens here. We got cooldown reduction. See? It would have bricked this item, at least for us. Now we do it again. Upgrade to legendary. Transfigure. Life on hit. See? What a waste of time. Essentially, like I said, what you want is it to remain modifiable and also to get the gem strength roll on there. So you're going to be burning through a lot of those, and I feel like you have so many of the materials that you're not even using. I feel like this is the best way forward with it to get rich as quick as possible. Step 11 and step 12 are kind of related, but tip 11 is to utilize the war plan system. If you didn't know, this might be kind of like a duh, but if you're just playing the game normally, doing nightmare dungeons, pits, all that stuff, you're not benefiting from the war plans and all the rewards that you get. So my tip is to use the war plans. Use the new plan feature. You get 3 rolls per war plan that you are doing. So if you don't roll something good in the first one, roll a new plan. If you don't like doing Hell Tides, don't do Hell Tides, roll a new plan. If you don't like doing Infernal Hordes, roll a new plan. And it goes on and on. But usually I get something I'd like doing. Like, I like doing Nightmare Dungeon, I like doing the Pit, and Karas Undercity is pretty fun. So those are the primary things that I like to do. My character's not very good at bosses, so I tend to avoid bosses. And I don't like Infernal Hordes, I don't care how juiced they are, blah blah blah. Tip number 12 is to use the war plans effectively. Essentially what you want to do is to select the activities that you can do fastest and you like doing. And if you don't get those activities, roll a new plan until you can get something that maybe you only have one activity you don't like. But try to get all the activities that are enjoyable for you. Tip number 13, use the training grounds. I've used the training grounds many times to test gear, test upgrades, test many different things because what the game tells you your damage isn't always accurate. So for example, I do 4.8 million damage per attack. Well, that's not true because I rely heavily on overpower stacks. So if I get my overpowered stacks, I'm no longer doing that 4.8 million and I'm doing 56 million. So, and with that in mind, there's also crit strike damage that is happening where I am doing 1 billion damage over and over again. So that is not completely reflected in my skill menu, in my skills description, or even on the character page. It does not show me the exact levels of damage. So using training grounds to see how much damage you do without risking dying is really essential with building your character and testing your gear and making sure that you're going to be doing the most damage effectively when you're going into your farming areas. Tip number 14. There's something called the armory. What is the armory, you might ask? Well, you can essentially save different builds for one character. So, and if you're like me, normally what I will do is I will finish a character and then I'll create a new character. And what I've been doing is I create a new character for a new build. And I do it that way. Well, like a dummy, I didn't find this out till recently. You can, instead of having 15 different necromancers, you can have one necromancer with 4 different builds on it for 4 different playstyles. So you can save your character slots for different characters. See, I have 2 sorceresses, I have 4 different necromancers, I have 5 different druids, and 4 different warlocks. That takes up the amount of characters you can create immediately. So utilize the armory to create your different builds that you're going to use. And additionally, what that does is allows you to keep your progress on your war plans for now. Since war plans are not across the account, all the progress that you do on your war plan is going to be tied to that specific character. So while you're using the armory system, you can use a different build and build your character a different way and still benefit from the war plans that you've been doing on your main character. Tip number 15, do not wait to temper and masterwork your gear. Tempering and masterworking are really beneficial to making your gear great and also improving your character overall. Tempering adds different affixes to your gear, and then masterworking raises those affixes that you have to a higher level. I would still masterwork that gear to the max to improve the amount that you're getting out of that gear piece. Or for armor pieces, you're getting armor. For weapons, you're getting damage. For jewelry, you're getting more resistances. So overall, increasing all that is going to increase both your offensive and defensive capabilities of your character. So I would not just save off and save all your materials to temper and upgrade the perfect pieces, because the likelihood of that happening is it's going to be extremely rare. I still reflect on other characters that I made from the beginning of playing Diablo 4 until now, and there's so much that I've learned that a lot of the things I did back then were completely wrong, and I was actually hindering the amount of damage that I'm doing because I rolled it wrong and I just saved out the materials too much, or I only put 1 or 2 levels of masterworking into a piece of gear when I could have maxed it out completely and had way more defense, way more offensive capabilities, and all that stuff. So don't wait to temper and masterwork your gear. Do it immediately. Do it now if you have the materials and resources to do so. All right, that was a lot of information, a lot of stuff, a lot of yapping, but I hope you got something out of it. That was the 15 tips to getting rich in Diablo 4 Lord of Hatred. I hope you got something out of the video. If you have additional tips, leave them in the comments below for other people. Like the video, subscribe for more, and we'll catch you next time. See you, goodbye.